witness Matlou.
Thank you, Marco. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to share my project with you. My name is Witness from Johannesburg, South Africa, as you can see. The title of my project is South African Historic Moments, History Told Through Music. This is the reason why I did this. It was me looking at some of the philosophies of the Global Jazz Institute, regarding what we could do as artists. And for me, it was to look into where I came from and to tell the story of my people. And I'm so happy to share that with you today. We have a map of Africa. The reason why I bring up a map is because since I've been in America, every time I say to people I'm from South Africa, they say, which country in South Africa? So as you can see, Africa is very big. There's North Africa, there's West Africa, there's East, and then we like right here on the blue. So that's where I'm from, right here. So this is the map of South Africa. Most of what I'll be presenting here today is stories in this area right here. And then we're going to move a little bit up to Johannesburg and Pretoria. So looking at the timeline, South Africa has a big history, so I'm not going to be able to cover everything. So that's to be continued as a part of the project as an artist. So looking at the early people who have occupied the southern part of Africa, you have the Bushmen, who are also referred to as the Khoisan or the Khoikhoi, or the San people. They've occupied most of the southern part of Africa. From Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, and South Africa. And also then they get followed by the Bantu-speaking people, of which I also belong to. Throughout history, there's been, sailors coming through Europe and going across the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean, exploring the land. And that brings us to guys like Bartolomeu Dias, who's a Portuguese sailor who's been across. But after him, we have a very interesting figure, Dutch in the 1652, Jan van Riebeeck. Jan van Riebeeck is like the the equivalence of Christopher Columbus. So he arrived, met the people, and then he was mentioned in history as someone who had found the land. But funny enough, there were people before him. So from the 1652, we go to 1795, where the British come. The British, when they come, they arrive around this area too. They take over from the Dutch. So the Dutch decide, oh, okay, we're losing against these people. So they try to move across to this area right here throughout, and then they take over. As the Dutch take over, they introduced laws that were kind of unfair to also lead us to something we called apartheid, of which was the word apartheid comes from the word apartness or separation. This was by racial segregation that was introduced through legislation. And throughout the time when they were ruling, the natives were treated unfairly. They didn't have as much, equal opportunities, work, and education. And you see, the natives started a movement called by then in 1912, it was called the African Native National Congress, which is now known as the African National Congress, the leader whom we most know, Nelson Mandela. So coming to the music, I wrote some music. The first piece I'm going to play for you is called The Encounters. The Encounters depicts the arrival of the Dutch ships in the southeast coast of South Africa. The second movement of the piece introduces the indigenous people, them coming to meet the Dutch for the first time. And then the third movement tells you about what went on a little bit during the time when they met. And I'll be doing some narration on top of the music. And that was the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck as he lands into the land for the first time, and the indigenous people gathering around him, asking themselves, who is this man whom we had not seen before? He looks so different. The clothes that he's wearing. At the same time, Jan van Riebeeck and his people asking himself, why aren't they wearing anything? See them calling each other, the chief saying, all the people, call all the people to come and see this man who just arrived in our land. And as they arrive, they gather around him. Jan van Riebeeck and his people, they try to think, they're all shocked, they're all in a state of shock. There were so much differences. The skin colors, the hair was different. As they look at each other, there's one thing that's next. They try to communicate, of which was a battle. As for the Khoisan, all they speak, all you hear is the click language, which the Dutch could not relate to at all. And as for the Dutch, you could see Jan van Riebeeck saying, my name is Jan van Riebeeck. I'm the leader of this people. Who are you? And you see the king of the tribe saying, I'm the leader of this people. But all you could hear is all clicks. There's nothing, no way for them to understand each other. What then? How do they communicate? Well, probably sign language. One other thing that was very interesting is they try to communicate with each other. They realized that they had interest in each other's material things. The Dutch had mirrors, had guns. They were wearing hats. They were wearing jackets, of whom the people didn't have. They had shells and hunting sticks and all that. They had the flute. They would play the flute to intrigue the visitors, to get them interested in them. Then Jan van Riebeeck sees an opportunity here where he could actually get a lot out of what the situation is. He starts presenting a mirror to them. They see a mirror for the first time. It's very exciting. He says, okay, I'll give you a mirror. You give me a cow. Okay, no problem. The mirror is very exciting. They bring their livestock, everything. And he says, okay, I give you a jacket. You give me a sheep. No problem. A jacket? I've not seen a jacket. I'm wearing a jacket. That'd be so cool. Bring their sheeps. As this goes on, you could see so much unfairness in all of this. But it wasn't fair at all because it was all new. A mirror, seeing a mirror for the first time is very exciting. Till later on you realize it doesn't give me water, it doesn't give me anything to eat. I can't put a mirror into my stomach. The unfairness of trading keeps going on for so long. Jan van Riebeeck had more interest. He realized that this land is so beautiful. I could use it as a stopping station when I sail across to the east. So he decided, okay, we could stay here. They started, living around, and later on they took over. They started building, they started, putting the indigenous people, separating them. And as you could see, this next piece ends with a very bitter taste. It's not as tasty. You would ask yourself, why am I presenting this at this point? The biggest purpose for me with this project, South Africa is known with a long history of racial segregation. I plan to do this project to unite the people of South Africa. What we need today is for the people to get along. Now we're going to shift a time in history where we discover Nelson Mandela. I wrote a piece for him. It's titled State of Mind. The state of mind depicts a man in solitary confinement. This is a time when he was in prison because he was one of those people that were against the movement of the apartheid, so they were trying to take it down. And him and a few others got arrested, and he went to jail. So I tried to write this piece where I captured his state of mind while he was in prison, isolated, staying by himself. Thank you. "1964 brings us to a time when he was actually, for the first time, to appear in court, and he gave a speech that day, which still resonates with us today, where he expressed the dream that he was fighting for. He was actually fighting for all people. The speech today is known as "I'm Prepared to Die." If you're interested to check it out, you could just type it on YouTube or on Google. You'll find the full speech that he gave. But basically, he's saying that he had fought against white domination. He had fought against black domination. He believes in a world where people could live together in a free and democratic society. So I took a little bit of that speech and added to this music to depict the state of emotion he was in, where he was prepared to die for what he was fighting for, which was fighting for unity for everybody. Actually, let's do it this way. It'll be better this way.
I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony.
And now, because of time, I'm gonna do the last one, of which is called, the song is called Confluence of the Two Oceans. Confluence of the Two Oceans is about the two oceans connecting together, the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. If you had not seen that, it happens in South Africa. You gotta go over there. So confluence of the two oceans fits pretty good in this project as part of, as a symbol of unity, the message to humanity to unite, that you have two things that are opposite, two opposite states of, that actually work together. Two oceans, you have cold and you have hot. They collide, but it actually works okay. So the message to humanity is that even with our differences, even with differences in skin color, we could still live together. We could still get along. So that's my message with the song. would like to end it right there. I would like to thank my advisor, Mr. Carl Riley, and Stephanie for being with me throughout this project. Thank you all.
Wonderful work, Witness. Matt, would you like to start the comments?
Witness, I think your presentation is very powerful. What I was doing, I wasn't writing email while I was doing this. I was using my notepad and writing some notes here, so it's not like I was distracted, but let me look at my notes here. I really like the whole notion of you telling the story of South Africa through music. The first thing that I saw was that I wish you wouldn't hide behind the pulpit, you know? When I saw this, I think it would be so nice if you were like out in center stage and if you interacted with the music. Okay. So I think when we talk about different kinds of presentations, it's like, how can you use these presentations? I could see you going to a number of different schools and doing this presentation, getting a number of musicians on stage that you could rehearse, and that you can tell your story of South Africa, and these people can be engaged in doing this. Mm-hmm. You know, what really hit me was when you're telling the story, and you talk about, hey, you know, well, the flute thing, you know, being a flute player, I hear the word flute, and it like piques my interest right away. But the way you talked about, well, the indigenous people from South Africa didn't see a suit, or didn't see that, and here you're wearing a suit, man, you know? And it's like, I would have liked to know what the indigenous clothing would look like. So, you know, if you had something that you could wear that was indicative of those kinds of things would be really nice. Okay. I don't mean to be long-winded, but I wrote some things too. I can't remember them. Oh, it's my other finger. So that was Encounters. You know, I thought you have a nice chamber music sound. Sounds like mid-20th century kind of stuff, you know, very European, classical. I was expecting to hear more South American kinds of influences or jazz influences, but I didn't. I heard more influences from Debussy, maybe Schoenberg. Yes. You know, that Eurocentric kind of music, which surprised me a bit because I thought I was going to hear more music with folk kinds of things. I'll just make this really short. Having a piano on stage would be nice to play a little bit. I'd just like to see more of a center stage approach. I think the thing about the state of mind of Nelson Mandela is very powerful. Again, the music is very impressionistic. You know, you had the Debussy, The Afternoon of a Faun kind of quote in there. You know, that whole tone kind of. So right away I start thinking again, oh, I'm in France, I'm this, I'm hearing a lot of, you know, European influences. But again, I think this would be a wonderful package that would be very powerful if you made it more interactive, that you could do with students, that you can get them interested in South African, and again, look at your culture through the lens of music. I think you're on your way to doing it, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, since Matt was mentioned the influences before, I would like to, you know, to ask you directly. First of all, congratulations. I think, like Matt, I think it's really, really powerful what you brought here together, and I think it's a great idea that you could show this in a lot of places, you know. And can you talk a little bit about, like, he was picking some influences, but could you tell from your point of view what were your influences that all together that made this music the way we hear it?
Okay, well, first of all, I would start with the classical music. As a kid, we don't have that many African musicians that write classical music. And as a kid, I was actually listening to classical music on radio on the AM station. I used to tune it on to the AM station, and I was always fascinated by the sound of the piano and what they were doing. It sounded like they were improvising to me. I didn't know they were reading music. So that's another thing that was like, you know, as I wanted to learn the music, but there was no way for me to have learned it. There was nobody to teach me the music. All I had access to it was just through listening on radio. And till I got here, I met Tamara DeSenrook, who's like helped me with with the writing and introduced me to a lot of this music. But as I started writing, I realized that actually I picked up all the sounds throughout when I was a kid, and it's just like coming out when I started writing. There was with this project also was to the reason why I bring in the European influences is because I want to represent Europe also as into an African project. And jazz was also through playing from church a little bit. I got to hear a record by Miles Davis. I kept chasing that sound. I was trying to like learn from those recordings till I met somebody in the community who was like be able to like give me most of the recordings, and that was the journey. Even today, I'm still chasing that sound.
Great, really great piece. I mean, I so enjoyed it. The Rivonia trial, I think I had to stop myself from crying. So, I mean, when you can evoke that kind of emotion, that's always wonderful. There was also, like, for me, that was really cool in that piece, like a certain kind of unresolved nature to it, where points where I thought it would resolve and it didn't, and I thought that was great because it feels like, what's happening now is still not, quite resolved, obviously. And overall, like the theme of the whole presentation, I heard like a lot of dissonance and unrest and conflict, but I also heard a lot of joy and harmony and hope, which seems to be something that the South African people always had, hope. And you really, to me, brought that emotion really well into it. One question I did have, a couple of questions. Like the part with the conflict at the end of the encounters, and you mentioned that there was going to be some conflict, but I feel like I didn't hear enough, conflict. Because it feels like to me, I mean, you mentioned that they had guns, but I didn't think I didn't really hear the violence and the things that must have happened for them to be able to take over, that country. At the end of that piece where you said it was, like to me, that was, the original weapons of mass destruction, I mean, there's so much going on in your piece, but at the end, I kind of wanted to feel this is where they really took over, And the state of mind of Mandela, I heard, I thought it was great. I think that there's a place, though, like that there's a sense of peace, inner peace that he had, from the things I've read, or anybody that's in solitary confinement or confined for that long a period. And with your piece, I heard so much chatter, which I think had to happen too, of course. There's got to be a lot of mind chatter. But at some point, I wanted to just feel a sense of peace that he must have had to have been able to survive that. Mm-hmm. So those were just things that I thought about while listening to it. But I just think you did a great job. And the only other question I had is who played on who were the musicians?
Right here. So this is all the musicians that played. It's hard to see. I'll read it out loud. So we had Laith Sadiq on first violin, Tanya Mesa on second violin. Tanya's in the back. We had Dan Lay on the viola, and we had Seth Matlou on the cello, and also Marta Roma, who's right here also. And we had Angie Obin and Julie Alma on the two flutes, and then Jong Yoon Ha, Chloe on the clarinet. She's also here today. And then Gustavo D'Amigo played the tenor and soprano saxophone. On trumpet, we had Mao Sona, who did a really great job. Him and Laith during the recording session, they helped me a lot. They were there for me as brothers. And Dorsey Mintz on the trombone, yours truly on the piano, Sang-wook Jung was on the bass, and James Dale was also on the bass. Kesivan Naidu played the percussion parts. The percussion parts I had it actually on a drum set, which is something that I have wanted to do for a long time. I always ask myself, why doesn't an orchestra have a drum set? Because it has some low drums, it has all this stuff. So this is something that I'm going to push forward, to bring in the drum set into it, the orchestra. Stephanie.
Okay. I think the whole piece is very beautiful, and I particularly love the idea of music and storytelling. I think it's very effective. But what you're trying to do today, I realize, is difficult, because you're giving us a presentation about a piece that you would be performing, where you probably, my guess, and you can tell me if it's what you're thinking about, you wouldn't be wearing a suit maybe, and you wouldn't maybe be behind a podium, and you may be playing piano, and there may be all these musicians on a stage. So you're trying to tell us about a performance. Could you describe a little bit how the actual performance would be different from what we just experienced today?
The actual performance for this project is actually with a full orchestra. I'll be playing, I'll be sitting on the piano, playing, and also I'll be narrating some of this. So I would step off the piano and to the right to the center of the stage, and then present the work as the musicians are still playing, and I would step into the piano at some point. So that's the project is pretty much of a live performance.
And there would be the film aspect of it as well, I suppose, the visual.
Yes.
Things would be similar to what we've seen today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's correct.
Thank you. It's
Thank
terrific.
you.
Witness,
Yes, sir.
congratulations.
Captain.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
There are programmatic elements, but to my eye, there are also choreographic elements. There are some formats where there is an ensemble on stage that is able to amplify the form through improvisation, and juxtaposed with that is an ensemble which is kinetic. That's what I'm seeing. There can be narration, but there's also a kinetic aspect.
That's right.
I think State of Minds and Rivonia Trial could easily fall into that form, where what we heard today is a jumping off point for improvisation. And you would need a choreographer and a troupe of dancers who were sensitive enough to follow the improvisation as it might be different from one time to the next. One piece where I think you began that journey was the confluence of two oceans, and one that you played for me that was not presented today, Africa yesterday and Africa tomorrow.
Yes, actually,
No,
Africa now,
Africa now?
Africa then. Africa now, Africa then.
Yes,
Yes,
that's the one.
that's the one we didn't play today.
So talk about your future with this material.
My future with this material, I see myself going on the road with an ensemble or with a few musicians going to some part of the world, or could be in the US, to do a performance with collaborating with other musicians, could be in an orchestra form, or in this kind of setting that I've presented. But at the same time, Carl is right. The music and how I see myself writing at this point, this stage in my life, is there's music and movement, and there's music, there's story. So that's something, that's the direction that I'm going, and also writing for film.
Yeah, Witness, I think that my comment as a listener, maybe the thing that really spoke to me the most about your music was a little bit was kind of like the imagery that you were portraying of yourself, you know, showing these beautiful landscapes, right? And then there's your face there, like part of the landscape. And I felt the music was just like that, like you're trying to narrate the story of your country through your music, but I feel you're into the music all the time. It's very personal. It's not just, you're not just narrating a story about your people. I feel your presence inside the music, just like I saw your face inside the scenery. And to me, as a listener, that was made this music very personal, and I can really feel it, even if I'm not from there, because I connect with your emotion. And I think this is a great accomplishment as a composer. I really hope you can continue in that way.
Thank you. That what Marco is saying is actually so true. I never discussed it with him. He doesn't.
No,
so
this is the first
he's
time.
just feeling it. Yeah, this piece is influenced by the time when I was there, actually, in this part of the country. I spent about 2 weeks in this land. So when I started writing, the piece just sounded like that part of the world, those two oceans. There was like no way I could run away. So even with the videos, I had to like just put it in it to represent the time when I was there.
Beautiful. Witness Matlou.